Hello everyone, today we're going to be going over the Wednesday, January 25th, 2023, Algebra 1 Regents. We're going to be going over only all of part 1. So part 1 only the multiple choice section for this test. So that being said, let's get started. Number 1 tells us asks us that when the expression 2x times x minus 4 minus 3 times x plus 5 is written in the simplest terms, the result is... So pretty much is asking us to combine like terms. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to distribute the things outside the parentheses. So 2x times x minus 4 minus 3 x plus 5, right? So our first thing is we're gonna distribute this negative 3 out. Remember, it's not just 3, it's minus 3. So what we're going to have is 2x x minus 4. Right, we're going to multiply it, we're going to distribute this out, so negative 3 times x is negative 3x, and negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Right, next order of business, we're going to distribute this 2x out. 2x times x is equal to 2x squared, and then 2x times negative 4, same thing as saying negative 8x minus 3x minus 15, right? Combine like terms. 2x, we can't combine that with anything, but negative 8x minus 3x is equal to negative 11x minus 15, and this is our final answer, right? Everything reduced down, and the answer choice that matches this is choice 1. Right, number 2, it says that the point 3 comma w is on a graph of y is equal to 2x plus 7. What is the value of w? If we look at this, what it really gives us, it gives us an x value, and it's asking us to solve for the y value, right? Because this is in point coordinate form, or x comma y form, right? So it's saying that when our x is equal to 3, what is our y equal to? So all we have to do is just plug this in, right? So y is equal to 2 times 3 plus 7. Y is equal to 6 plus 7, that's 13, so the answer is 4. Just don't get confused by this. 3 comma y is the same thing as saying 3 comma w is the same thing as saying 3 comma y. It gives us the equation here, so just plug it in. Number 3 tells us that the students were asked to write 2x cubed plus 3x plus 4x squared plus 1 in standard form. 4 students' responses are shown below, right? So what is standard form? Standard form is when you write your equation or your expression in descending order of the degree of x or the degree of your variable. What that means is pretty much this, where the number with the biggest that's raised to the greatest power, the biggest power is written first. The number written to the second smallest, to the second biggest power is written second, and the number with the smallest power, this is x to the power of 1, is written last, right? So which student does that, right? So we know that the number raised to the biggest power is 2x cubed, right? So that has to come first. So automatically we can eliminate Alexa and Eric, right? Because they didn't write 2x third to the first, right? And the number that has to come second is 4x squared, right? Because 4x squared is the second biggest number, and the only student that does that was Ryan, right? So again, we look at this 2x cubed, that's our biggest, 4x squared is our second biggest, 3x is our third biggest, and 1 is our smallest, right? And they write that properly. Number 4 asks that given f of x is equal to negative 3x squared plus 10, what is the value of f of negative 2? F of negative 2 literally is the same thing as saying x is equal to negative 2. Same thing as saying that when x is equal to negative 2, y is equal to what, right? And f of x is the same thing as saying y, right? So what it gives us is y is equal to negative 3x squared plus 10, and it's asking us what does y equal when x is equal to negative 2. So once again, we just plug it in. We get y is equal to negative 3 times negative 2 squared plus 10. Y is equal to negative 2 squared is 4, and then 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. Negative 12 plus 10, and then y is equal to negative 2. Number 5 asks us which relationship is a function. Remember that in a function, every x value has a unique y value. What this means is that when x is, for example, when x is equal to 1, our y has to, there should be only one y value that's equal to. if x is equal to 1, it can't equal 2 or 3, right? It only has to equal one of these. It can't be multiple in order for it to be a function, right? So keeping that rule in mind, let's look at our answer choices. This circle right here isn't a function, right? Because if we look here at this x value, at this value of x, we have two y values. So let's say this is x of 3, right? That means that our y is 2, right? But at the same time, our y can also be -2, right? So since this x has two different outputs or two different y values, it can't be a function. So we eliminate it. Number 4, we look here. Remember that domain is another way of saying x, and range is another way of saying y. So it's saying that when x is 3, y is equal to 4. Perfect, right? That's a unique output, right? And then we look here. It's saying that when x is 6, y is 5. Right, which is okay, but then you look here, it's also saying that when x is 6, y is 7, and that makes it wrong because our x value has multiple y values, right? And the same thing happens with number 2. Here, input is x, output is y. Remember that. Here it's saying that when x is 7, y is equal to 3, and when x is 7, y is equal to 5. So obviously, this is not a function because this x has multiple y values, which leaves us with number 1 being the only solution, right? Once again, or you could just look at it, right? Here, when x is 1, it's equal to y is equal to 3. When x is 2, y is equal to 1. When x is 3, y is equal to 1. And when x is 4, y is equal to 7. So each x value has a unique output. Nothing repeats. So 5 has to be the function, right? Number 6 asks us what is the value of a third quartile in the box plot shown below. So remember that this line is our first quartile, this line is our second quartile, and this line is our third quartile. So if we bring this down, this is 36. So the value of a third quartile is going to be 36, right? Number 7 asks what is the solution to 2 plus 3 times 2a plus 1 is equal to 3 times a plus 2. Obviously, what is the solution? We're solving for the value of a. So the way I would do this is I would distribute and simplify on both sides first and then solve for a, right? So on the left side, we have to distribute this 3 out. So that's 2 plus 3 times 2a, right? Same thing as saying 6a. And right here, we have 3 times 1, which is 3. So what you have is 2 plus 6a plus 3. We can rewrite that as 6a plus 5. And on this side, we just have to distribute this 3 out. So 3 times a is 3a. And then 3 times 2 is 6, so plus 6. Right here, all we have to do is minus 3a on both sides. So we're left with 3a plus 5 is equal to 6. We subtract 5 on both sides. We get 3a is equal to 1. And then we divide by 3 on both sides. We get a is equal to 1/3, which is choice 2. Moving on to number 8. It asks us, or it tells us, one Saturday afternoon, 3 friends decided to keep track of the number of text messages they received each hour from 8 a.m. to noon. The results are shown below. Emily said that the number of messages she received increased by 8 each hour. Jessica said that the number of messages she received doubled each hour. Chris said that he received 3 messages the first hour, 10 the second, and on the third, 15 the last. Which of the friends' responses classifies the number of messages they received as a linear function? Remember that a linear function, the slope does not change. In other words, the thing that the function is increasing by, or the rate, is staying the same. It's staying the same number throughout, right? So let's look here. It's saying that Emily said the number of messages she received increased by 8 each hour. What this is saying is that if you look at the total number of messages each hour, 8 is being added on. So the first hour, 8 were added, second hour, 8 were added, third hour, 8 were added, and the fourth hour, 8 were added. So this is linear, right? Because the slope doesn't change. In here, their slope is 8. She's receiving 8 messages each hour, and this 8 doesn't change. So Emily is valid, right? She's linear. If you look here, Jessica said that the number of messages she received doubled every hour. This is exponential. What this is saying is she received, for example, she could have received 2 messages the first hour, right? And then the number of messages she received doubled, right? So then the next hour she received 4 messages. Then the next hour 8, then the next hour 16, right? And this isn't linear because the number of messages she's getting, or the number of messages she's increasing by, changes, right? Her rate changes. That's not linear. Chris said that he received 3 messages the first hour and then 10 the second hour. Once again, this cannot be linear because the number of messages it's increasing by, or his slope, is changing, and that's not linear. So it's Emily only. Number 9 asks which expression is equal to x plus 4 squared times x plus 4 squared. Remember that to save a lot of time, don't multiply this out. Remember your exponent rules, and that is that a to the power of b times a to the power of b is equal to a to the power of b plus b, right? In this case, if we look here, our bases are actually the same, right? X plus 4 and x plus 4 are the same thing, right? Or actually, yeah, they're completely the same thing. So what we can do is just rewrite it x plus 4 and just add their exponents, right? So this is the same thing as saying x plus 4 times x plus 4 is equal to x plus 4 to the power of 2 plus 3, which is equal to x plus 4 to the power of 5. All right, some students would like multiply that out, distribute everything. That would suck. That would waste a lot of time. So all you have to do is remember your exponent rules, remember that the bases are the same, and just add them together, right? Number 10 asks, or it says, Caitlin graphs the function f of x is equal to ax squared, where a is a positive integer. If Caitlin multiplies a by -2, when compared to f of x, the new graph will become, right? So for this problem, I think the easiest way to do it is just to graph it on your graphing calculator, which is allowed on this test. So on my graphing calculator, right, ax squared, I'm just going to make my a -1. I'm going to make my a equal to 1, right? So here I'm going to write my x squared graph. All right, so I'm going to graph x squared, and what I get is this, right? Passes through the origin, right? Now she says if she multiplies a by -2, right? So remember that our a is 1. So if we multiply our a by -2, we get -2x, right? And right now I'm going to graph that on my graphing calculator. -2x squared. I graph that, and what I get is this. The direction is flipped and it's slightly narrow, right? So which one? It's obviously it opens downwards, right? So we're going to eliminate anything that says open upwards, and it's going to be narrower and it opens downwards, right? So I guess a faster way to do this is to remember that whenever you have something x squared and the coefficient is negative, a negative coefficient means it opens downwards. And whenever your coefficient, the bigger your coefficient, the narrower. All right. So Sunny purchases a new car for $29,873. The car depreciates 20% annually. Which expression can be used to determine the value of the car after t years? Right. So remember your the formula for exponents. It's y is equal to a 1 plus whatever your rate is to the power of time, right? So right here, a is going to be starting value, and r is your percent change annually or monthly, whatever it is. It's just your percent change, and t is your time, right? Or the amount of years that it's passed. So it says that she depreciates by 20% annually, right? So if we're deprecating, that means negative. It's reduced. It's the value is decreasing by 20%. So that's -20, right? 20%. Same thing as saying -0.2, right? So if we look at our choices here, we can immediately remove 1 and 2, right? Because they don't have our 1 plus something. And if we look at number 4, we can eliminate number 4 because it's saying 1 plus 20%, which is bad, right? What this is going to give us is 1.2. It's saying, this one is saying that it's increasing by 20% each year, not decreasing. And number 3 is going to be the only correct one, because it's going to be, because 1 plus -0.2 is equal to 1 minus 0.2. Number 12 asks that if f of x is equal to x squared plus 2x plus 1, and g of x is equal to 7x minus 5, for which values of x is f of x equal to g of x, right? So f of x being equal to g of x, same, you just make these two functions equal to each other. So you have x squared plus 2x plus 1 is equal to 7x minus 5, right? We have to move everything on one side so we can combine like terms. So you subtract 7x on both sides. 2x minus 7x is equal to negative 5, so you have x squared minus 5x. And we're going to add 5 on both sides. 1 plus 5 is 6, right? So we're left with this. X squared minus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. And we're looking for the value of x. So we're solving for a value of x that will give us 0 as our answer, right? So the fastest way to do this is just to I would say I guess FOIL or like reverse FOIL, right? So here, like we said, we have x squared minus 5x plus 6, and we're gonna turn this into x, right? So we're gonna need to find two multiples that add to negative 5 but multiply to negative 6. So I could imagine that negative 2 times negative 3, right? Negative 2 times negative 3 is 6, but if you add negative 2 to negative 3, that's also equal to negative 5, right? So that's going to be our two values. So x squared, we can rewrite this as x squared minus 2x minus 3x plus 6, and we could just distribute the rest out. X, or divide the rest out. X, that's equal to x minus 2, and we get the negative 3 out. Here's x minus 2, right? So here's we have x minus 2, and here's x minus 3. So the value here is going to be x minus, what we have is x minus 2 times x minus 3 is equal to 0. So which values of x is going to be, is it going to equal to 0? The values 2 and the values 3 are going to give you 0, right? Because 2 minus 2 is 0 and 3 minus 3 is 0, right? So answer choice 4 is our solution. Just remember what we did here was we set these two equal to each other, right? And then we solved for x by foiling. So 13 says that Skylar mows the lawn in the summer. The function f of x is used to model the amount of money earned, where x is the number of lawns completely mowed. A reasonable domain for this function would be, right? So a domain is just x. So the range of all of the x values in this problem. So I would draw out a nice little coordinate plane. So it's saying that the function f of x is used to model the amount of money earned, where x is the number of lawns completely mowed, right? So where on this x-axis should our x points lie? Well, if you think about it, if x is the number of lawns mowed, you can't mow negative lawns, right? So obviously this is going to be out of the picture. It can't be negative, right? And if you think about it, you can't mow 1 1/2 lawn, right? You could only mow a full lawn and get the full price for that. So it's going to be whole numbers, right? So that in mind, you knowing that it can't be a decimal, so that and if it can't be decimal, that also takes irrational numbers out of the picture, right? Because irrational numbers usually have decimals, right? And we can also take rational numbers out, because rational numbers include negative numbers, right? -1 is rational, but you can't mow -1 lawns, right? That doesn't make sense, right? We can also eliminate real numbers, because real numbers also contain negatives in them, right? And that's leaving us with natural numbers, right? Natural numbers don't include negatives. It doesn't include negatives. It doesn't include the weird non-repeating decimals. So we stick with natural numbers and then we move on. 14 asks which expression is equal to 2x squared plus 8x minus 10. This is similar to what we did in number 12, actually. All we have to do is figure out what multiplies into this. So 2x squared plus 8x minus 10. The rule here is since this has a coefficient, we're going to have to multiply this coefficient by this number, right? So negative 20. So we're looking for a number that multiplies into negative 20, but adds up to positive 8. And what I thought of was 10 times negative 2, right? Because 10 times negative 2 is technically still negative 20, but if you add them, it's 8, right? So knowing this, we rewrite our problem as 2x squared minus 2x plus 10x minus 10, right? We factor out 2x, we're left with x minus 1. We factor out 10, we're left with x minus 1, right? So we have 2x plus 10 times x minus 1, right? Now don't panic. If we look here, 2x plus 10, we can take a 2 out of there because 2x is divisible by 2 and 10 is divisible by 2. So really what this is equal to is 2 times 2x plus 5 times x minus 1. And which one is that? Which choice mimics that? That's choice number 1. So 14 is 1. 15 says that Ian throws a ball up in the air and lets it fall to the ground. The height of the ball, h of t, is modeled by the equation h of t is equal to negative 16t squared plus 6t plus 3, where h of t is measured in feet and time t measured in seconds. The number 3 in h of t represents what, right? So t is going to be our y-intercept, right? How do we know it's our y-intercept? It's because it's it's the only term that doesn't have a coefficient assigned to it, right? So if we were to graph this, and I encourage you guys to graph this. I'm graphing it right now on my calculator, right? So negative 16t squared plus 6t plus 3. What you get is this, right? And of course this is 3. So this confirms that 3 is our y intercept, right? And if we look at this problem, right, and we just graphed it, right? And that's the first thing we should have done, right? We graphed it, and we know that our y value is our height. And what this problem is asking is like what happens at 3? Why is 3 there, right? So if we look at 3 and we look at 1, right, the maximum height of the ball, is it? Well, it's saying that a ball is up in the air and lets it fall to the ground, right? So this isn't the maximum height of the ball technically because there is no max value. It's falling down, right? So we can eliminate number 1, right? Number 2 is saying the height from which the ball is thrown. And I would agree with that. I would agree with number 2, right? Because from here, our y is 3 and our x is 0, right? So at 0 seconds, our ball is 3 feet in the air, and then from there it begins dropping. So I think 3 best represents the height from which the ball is thrown, right? And the reason why this wouldn't be the maximum height of the ball is because it's the starting point, right? Instead of, if it was the maximum height of the ball, then the problem would probably look something like this, and this would be the maximum height, right? But the max height is not the same thing as saying that the starting position, right? So moving on to number 16, it says that 32 teams are participating in a basketball tournament. Only the winning teams in each round advance to the next round, as shown in the table below, right? It says which function type best models the relationship in the number of rounds completed and the number of teams remaining. So if we look here, obviously it's not going to be linear, because if we look here, this decreases by 16, then this decreases by 8, right? Then this decreases by 4, 2, and then 1. So obviously it's not linear. And absolute value, I wouldn't say absolute value because you can't have -1 remaining teams and you can't have -1 remaining rounds. So that just wouldn't make sense in this context. What would make, and I don't think it's quadratic, right? Because in order for something to be quadratic, you're going to have a negative side, right? And that simply isn't shown here. So this is obviously is exponential, right? Because as each round goes, the number of teams remaining, or the amount of number, or the number that is decreased by, changes and decreases. So if we look here, what's 1 times 2 times 2? 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 16 times 2 is 36. What's happening here is it's increasing exponentially, right? And if we look at it from this way on, it's decreasing exponentially. So it's an exponential graph, right? 17, it says that in a geometric sequence, the first term is 4 and the common ratio is -3. The fifth term in the sequence has to be 1, right? So the way to do this, I believe, would be to set your, you'd have to go into mode on your calculator and then set your function, set the graph to sequential, right? Because it's sequence, right? And then you set your starting you set your first term to 4, and then you set your u, or your common ratio, to -3, right? And you graph it, and what you get is 324, right? So I think the fastest way to do this is just to set your plot in your calculator to sequential and just plug it in. Right, moving on to number 18, it says that the amount of energy Q in joules needed to raise the temperature m grams of a substance is given by the formula Q is equal to mc times T of F minus T of I, right? Where C is the specific heat capacity of a substance. If its initial temperature is T, an equation to find final temperature, TF, is what? So all of this is saying, or is asking us, make all of this in terms of T of F, right? So rewrite this so that everything is equal to T of F. Right, so the first thing we have to do in order to write this, the T of F, right, is we have to eventually get T of F out of these parentheses, and the fastest way to do that is to divide both sides by MC, because look what happens. These two cancel out, so you know that Q over MC is equal to T of F minus T of I, or T initial, right? And next, all you have to do is just add T of I on both sides, right? So what you're left with is Q over MC, right, is equal to T of F, right? Oh, sorry, Q over MC plus T of I. And the answer choice that reflects that best is choice number 2. Number 19 asks that when using the method of completing the square, which equation is equivalent to x squared minus 12x minus 10 is equal to 0. Completing the square, all that means is you add b over 2 squared to both sides, and then you factor it, right? So in this scenario, our b value is -12. So -12 over 2 squared. Let me just erase this so we have more space. Right, so -2 over 12, sorry, -12 over 2 is equal to -6, and a -6 squared is equal to 36. So what we're going to do is we're going to have x squared minus 12x plus 36 minus 10 plus 36. Or minus 10, yeah, minus 10 plus 36. Sorry, minus 10 minus 36. The reason why we're subtracting minus 36 is if we add 36 on this side and we subtract it this side and we subtract it from this side, it's the same thing as saying we did nothing to the problem, right? And that's the only way that this is like mathematically legal or whatever. But pretty much just remember that you add it onto the inside of the parentheses and you subtract it to the outside of the parentheses, right? So x squared minus 12x plus 36, we can rewrite this as x minus 6 squared, right? Just remember that just remember the formula a minus b squared is equal to a squared minus 2ab plus b squared, right? Because our a squared is x, so x squared minus 2ab, so 2 times -6 times x and -12x. You could just see that from this, right? And here you have -10 minus 36, so you have x minus 6 squared minus 46 is equal to 0, right? And obviously none of our problems are in terms of 0, so we just add the 46 on this side, so we know that x minus 6 squared is equal to 46. And that's going to be choice number 4. Right, 20, it's saying that which quadratic function has the smallest minimum value? Right, so going through these, I would try my best to graph all of these just so you could like visualize the actual minimum values. So what is the minimum value? The minimum value is the smallest y value, right? So I'm going to start off with number 3, or choice 3, and I'm going to plug this into my calculator. I'm going to have 6x minus 2 squared minus 2. And this is going to look like this. It's going to look like that, and this point is going to be 2 comma negative 2. So here our minimum value, our smallest minimum y value, or just our minimum, is negative 2, right? If we look at this, our minimum is going to be 0, right? This y is going to increase to infinity, but the smallest it'll ever be is 0, right? So here's negative 2, here's 0, so we could automatically cross out 4, right? Right here, it's saying that when x is 0, y is 6, x is 1, y is 2. If you look here, the smallest value we're ever going to get is 0 from this table, right? And it's the same and we know that negative 2 is smaller than 0, so we could eliminate 2 and 3, right? That leaves us with 1. If you plug 1 into your graph, and I'm going to do that right now, 6x squared plus 5x minus 2. The graph is going to look something like this. It's going to pass through the origin, right? It's going to go like this. This y value is negative 3, right? So if we look at this, this graph is going, these y values are going to increase to infinity, but the smallest it'll ever be is negative 3. So the minimum here is negative 3. The minimum here is negative 2, and the minimum in these two is 0, right? So negative 3 is the smallest out of all of them. So 1 has to be your answer. Right, negative 1 asks which representation yields the same outcome as the sequence defined recursively below. Right, so if you know that a of 1 is equal to 3 and a of n is equal to negative 4 plus a of n minus 1, a of n minus 1, you know, you could just combine these two, or you could actually rewrite this as a of n is equal to 4 and minus 1. So that gives us 3 as our answer. 22, it asks if the zeros of the function of g of x are negative 3, 0, 4, which function can represent g, right? So we want to write a function where whenever we have our x value of negative 3, of 0, or negative 4, our y value is 0. So the best way to do that is just to write x plus 3, x minus 4, and 0. Because if you think about it, if you have an x value of negative 3 plus 3 is 0. If you have an x value of 4 minus 4 is 0. If you have an x value of 0, anything times 0 is 0. So you would just rewrite this with the opposite signs and put x in front of it, and this would be your function. So, or g of x is equal to x plus 3, x minus 4, 0, and x. And which one shows this? It's choice number 3. Number 23 says that Morgan read that a snail moves at 72 feet per day. He performs the calculations to convert this rate into different units. What are the units for the converted rate? All you have to do is figure out which units cancel out for this. So you know that day is on bottom, day is on top, so days cancel out, right? You know that hours is on bottom, hours is on top, so they cancel out, right? And you know that feet on top, feet on bottom cancel out, right? So what you're left is inches over minute, right? So 4 is inches per minute. And now last question, 24, says that during the summer vacation, Ben decides to sell hot dogs and pretzels on a food cart in Manhattan. It costs Ben 50 cents for each hot dog and 40 cents for each pretzel. He only has $100 to spend each day on hot dogs and pretzels. He wants to sell at least 200 items per day, right? If H is the number of hot dogs and P is the number of pretzels, which inequality would be part of a system of inequalities used to determine the total number of hot dogs and pretzels that Ben can sell, right? So he knows that he wants to sell at least 200 items each day, right? And it doesn't tell us that he has a budget or anything. So you know that the budget, so we don't have a budget, which means that he can sell as many things as he wants, just so long as they're above 200, right? It cost him 40 cents per pretzel and 50 cents per each hot dog. Doesn't matter, right? Oh, never mind. Sorry. I misread the question. My fault. It does tell him he has a budget, right? But it says that he wants to sell at least 200 items each day, right? And H is the amount of hot dogs and P is the number of pretzels, which inequality would be part of a system of inequalities just to determine the total number of hot dogs and pretzels he can sell, right? What he can sell has to be at least 200 items, and the only one that represents this is choice number 2, right? Because if he wants to sell at least 200 items, that means that the lowest he can go, H plus P, the total of hot dogs and pretzels that he sells, has to be at least 200, right? So equal to 200, or it has to be greater than 200. And that's the only problem that's the only expression that represents that. Number 1 says that the total number of hot dogs and pretzels is less than or equal to 200. This says that this is in terms of the price, right? So these two are automatically wrong, right? Because it's in terms of the total number of pretzels. Instead of being in terms of $100, it's in terms of the total amount of things that he's trying to sell, right? So that's it. That's the entire part 1 section of the Algebra 1, the January 25th, 2023 Algebra 1 Regents. I'll leave the link for this test in the description of this video. Hope you learned something. Hope you have a nice day. Goodbye.